We made this.
Welcome to Back to the Decade, a podcast where we rewind 10 years and reflect on pop culture of the time. And we are talking about the movies of 2011 this season on the show. This is going to be our March episode reviewing Rango, The Lincoln Lawyer, and Limitless. One pretty different movie, and then two movies that are like pretty similar in the ways that they're remembered. We'll get into it. But anyway, I'm Thomas Adams, and I'm joined, as always, by Nick Hoffman.
Happy St. Patty's Day, baby!
St. Patty's Day.
Drinking a Guinness, feeling good. Just watched Rango. It was fun.
The world is looking brighter. I am freshly vaccinated.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I meant to ask you that before we even started recording. How'd that go? How you feel?
It was good. I had like some minor soreness in my arm for part of the day. I woke up kind of numb, but really like nothing. I did have the Pfizer, so I hear that the second shot is more difficult from a side effects perspective. But
your whole body was numb? You woke up and it was all numb?
My arm.
Just the arm.
Just the arm. Just the arm that they
That'd be pretty cool if you were completely numb from head to toe. Like, I can't feel anything.
But yeah, it was. I personally had a pretty easy process with it. I know a lot of people have really struggled with long lines and difficulty getting their appointments to happen like in a timely manner, but mine was pretty simple. So yeah, I'm excited. We'll go back in 4 weeks and finish it off.
Yeah, Kat got hers today.
She did she go to a pharmacy?
She went to Kroger, like bumfuck nowhere. I don't even know where.
Oh, that's right. Caitlin was telling me she had to go out to like Gainesville, Georgia.
Yeah.
She had to like drive way out there.
Yeah, but
I got kind of lucky because I had an appointment in Macon, and I was just like, fuck it, I'll drive out there 8 a.m, drive back, because I couldn't find something anywhere else. But luckily, like, they opened up a new batch of appointments on Monday morning. I found something like 15 minutes from my house and just got it done.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
So yeah, aside from that, in the kind of a big week in the movie world, because we had Oscar nominations for the films of, I guess 2020 is what they're calling it, but because of the pandemic, they kind of expanded some 2021 movies into the eligibility. And you said before we got on, you have not seen these yet, right?
Nope. Kat and I watched the Golden Globes, and that was whatever. But I still haven't looked at the Oscar nominations for whatever reason. I don't know. I keep forgetting that they're released.
Yeah, so they had 8 nominations for Best Picture. I think in our conversations we've seen most of these. The one I've not seen is The Father, which I've heard good things about. It's like an Alzheimer's dementia story. It's not even out yet for video on demand, which is probably why it's been difficult to watch.
Not the one with that's Anthony Hopkins and
Olivia Colman.
Alzheimer's, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I heard it was, or I read that it was the role of a lifetime for Anthony Hopkins.
For Hopkins?
I'm like, well, okay. Quite a life.
A friend of mine told me that it was the best performance of his career.
Huh.
To which I was like, I mean, you're not going to get someone whose, favorite film or, favorite drama of all time is The Silence of the Lambs to consider that, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah.
Other nominees were Judas and the Black Messiah for Best Picture.
Awesome.
Also had Nomadland, Minari, Sound of Metal, Trial of the Chicago 7, Promising Young Woman, and Mank, which you've kind of dissed before on the show.
Mank?
Yeah. Didn't you have a problem with Mank?
No, because I actually we started watching Mank, but I think we started too late, and maybe he had one too many drinks or something. And I just didn't. We weren't like fully engaged in the first like 20 minutes or so, so we just stopped playing it. But no, I don't have a problem with it. I still need to really want to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard complaints that it's boring and stuff, and I think I do like that movie. It's maybe one of the lower ranked films on that list for me. I just caught up with Promising Young Women last week. We kind of talked about this off mic a little bit because I know that you saw that a while ago. That's one that I really wanted to like, but just really couldn't quite get behind all the way.
Yeah, I felt the same way for many reasons.
All in all, though, I do like these nominees. Did you ever get a chance to watch Sound of Metal?
Not yet, but I do, especially since you gave me that glowing review. I do really want to watch it.
I mean, you as someone that's really into music, and
Yeah, it looks awesome.
I think that'll be right up your alley. But yeah, I just wanted to go over at least the Best Picture nominees. The acting stuff was pretty predictable. I think Chadwick Boseman is ultimately going to win posthumously for his performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Yeah, I need to see that still too.
That's a movie I saw. He's unbelievable. The movie's kind of whatever. I wasn't very impressed with it. I do think he's really great, and it's well deserved. But yeah, I think that the favorites right now are him, Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah, which is like an extremely well deserving Oscar. He's amazing in that movie.
Yeah, man, that movie rocked.
And the actress categories are a little more up in the air. But we will get into more of that in 2030. We're here to talk about the films of 2011, and I think we might end up disagreeing more in this episode than we have ever before on the show, so we should just go on and get into it. I think it's time to hit that decade rewind.
Let's go back to the decade.
All right, so you want to start with the movie that we both agree on?
Yeah, just start it like fluffy and nice, and Rango's a feel-good, fun little adventure through the desert as amphibians and other creatures.
I hadn't seen Rango before. You had. One of the reasons that I thought we needed to talk about it is that it's one of only like 2 films in the past, I think 15 years, that won Best Animated Movie at the Oscars, despite not being from Disney or Pixar. It's Rango and it's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Rango was a Nickelodeon movie, believe it or not.
Oh.
Produced by Paramount. But I heard a lot of great things about Rango. It's directed by Gore Verbinski, who is best known for directing the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. He also did The Ring, which is one of the more famous horror movies of the last century. And yeah, I thought this movie was great. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought the premise was hilarious. I think the animation is really cool. It's a little uncanny valley at times, where the characters are these like grotesque reptiles and amphibians that live in the desert just outside Las Vegas, and they can be kind of gross. I think that they look a little off-putting at times, and it's kind of hard to get used to. But it's a fun story. It's like a classic Western when you break it down, kind of in the vein of old Clint Eastwood movies. There's a pointed joke toward Clint Eastwood at the end of the film.
Man with No Name, the voice or the Sound of the West or something like that, right? The Spirit of the West. The
Spirit of the West, voiced by Timothy Olyphant.
Timothy Olyphant, dude. Legend. I mean, I think it's so cool how Timothy Olyphant's become like our generation's...
Our Eastwood. Yeah, he's the modern day Eastwood.
He's like, he became this guy, this Western guy. I love it.
Right.
Obviously, like, I mean, I never watched Justified, but it's one of those shows that I plan on watching when I'm like in my 50s or something. I don't know. And then, of course, he's in the latest Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, playing an actor that does Western
westerns.
movies.
I love Timothy Olyphant. He's really
Yeah.
just one of my favorite character actors that just kind of pops up in random things.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, I mean, we didn't even mention Deadwood. Like Deadwood's where he kind of got
Oh
his
yeah.
start.
That's another one too. Yeah, I'm gonna
Right.
watch all of it in my 50s.
Yeah, that's you just wait and go back when you're of the right age to visit Deadwood. But he's also just a great comedic actor. He was on this show on Netflix with Drew Barrymore called Santa Clarita Diet, which was kind of a quirky show, and it was fine. But he was just so funny on it, I thought, and I was very surprised to see him so effective in like a loose role that wasn't dramatic and just kind of goofy.
Yeah, I couldn't get in the premise of that show, but it looked cute enough.
Talk about a show with a gross premise that
Yeah.
was like pretty unsettling at times. But Rango's great. I think that the action scenes in this movie are really fun. There's a lot of homages to classic action films. Like we were saying over text, there's a chase scene that kind of plays like a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
As it's happening
Bats.
through the air with rodents riding on the backs of bats. And there's a
Ride of the Valkyrie. Like I love the rodents playing on the banjo. The Ride of the Valkyrie. That's so cool.
There's like fun shootouts that are the villain is a rattlesnake that has a machine gun attached to the end of his tail as opposed to a rattle, and that's like super fun. And
voiced by Bill Nye, not the science guy,
not the science guy,
the
stately
brilliant
British man,
British actor. Most people know him from Love Actually as the fun, quirky rock star.
Great voice performances. I have like some minor gripes that I'll get into later, but overall, I really like this movie, and I'll go ahead and let you say your piece about it.
Yeah, I love my favorite part. Really, I mean, at least like one of my favorite parts is the very opening sequence when he's kind of like doing like a stage play in his cage, and everything is just perfect. And well, not necessarily perfect, but life is just, he's content, right? Like with his life in his cage, and his, I guess, owners are like moving. They seem to be moving somewhere, and he's in the back of their car, and he's putting on this like show for pretty much just himself with his, like, he's got a little goldfish toy, and he's got like a little like old Barbie doll, and
his friends are inanimate objects.
Yeah. It actually kind of reminded me of that scene just a little bit of like Toy Story scene, because he's like setting up all the toys to do certain things, and making them be alive in his head, even though they're just, like you said, inanimate objects. But and then everything literally comes crashing to a halt when the car that he's in, they try to avoid an animal crossing the road, which is the armadillo.
And that's a great, just to interrupt real quick, the way that they choreograph that scene is just like so awesome.
So awesome, man.
It's so great. The needle drop too. I forget what the song is that breaks in the moment that the cage kind of like lifts off the truck, but it's of course really cool.
Of course, the shout out, the homage to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Hunter S. Thompson driving his convertible across the desert with Gonzo in the back, and like it. I mean, clearly, like most people know that Johnny Depp played Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing back in I guess it was like '96 or something, but very famous role for him. So the fact that they sort of crossed those universes, I thought was really cool. I always appreciate that kind of stuff in film. And then his whole world is just completely turned upside down, and the armadillo that is the reason for his ejection out of the only home he ever knew, it kind of tells him to just like follow his shadow, and head west, and he goes into the desert and finds this little town that's struggling to maintain their water supply, and kind of comes in with, because his whole thing was like, who am I? You know, that was kind of the question he proposed to himself before he even was ejected out of the car. It was like, who am I? So he thinks about that, and he's like, oh, I could be anyone. I could be anybody. So he gets really creative with it. He names himself Rango, because before that he really is just like a lizard with no name.
Right. He's just a lizard.
And, yeah. And he kind of makes up this story about his adventures through the West, and like lies about murdering a gang of 7 with 1 bullet. That kind of becomes his MO of being able to defeat his enemies with 1 bullet.
Right.
Which remarkably he does throughout the film for the most part. Like
there's this scene with the hawk, right, where he shoots whatever bondage that is that he's in, and it like ricochets, and
it's licorice.
Yeah, it ricochets, hits the tower, and drops on the hawk. I want to say for that opening scene, I just think it's smart and cheeky writing, the way they set that up, where he's like doing his performance in the cage, and he's talking to himself basically about like what the story needs and like why isn't it working, and he says something to the effect of, that's what it needs. It needs the hero it needs an event that thrusts the hero into conflict, and they spend the rest of the story trying to resolve it. Like the moment he says that, it's like boom, the cage comes off the truck.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I just thought that was like clever, the way that they kind of used the stage setting to kind of like throw you into the story.
Yeah. It's just a really enjoyable movie. And the story that I have, like, actually have quite a connection with this movie, because I watched it, I guess probably it was 2012. I don't know if I watched the year it actually came out. It could have been 2011. I don't know. But I heard it was good. I watched it at the time I was living with a friend, Peachtree City, and I loved it so much that I decided I'd go out and buy myself a lizard.
Really?
And yeah, no shit. And you can see the cage behind me.
Yeah, I see it.
This fucking lizard like won't die. This thing's still alive.
It's still alive all these years later.
Yeah, dude. It's like almost, well, what is it? Yeah, I mean it's 10 years old at this point. Just about. But anyway, I loved the movie Rango. I wanted to get a chameleon, but they were out of chameleon, so I ended up getting a crested gecko.
Okay.
And they're pretty cool. They're like, they're nocturnal is the only thing, so you like never really see them. Kind of a pointless pet, because they don't really like to be held or handled by humans. They're nocturnal, so they really only come out at night. And when you do kind of hold them or whatever, take them out of their cage, they just sort of get stressed out. But I don't know. I've been doing something right, because the thing's still alive. And and I named it Django, even though she's a girl. But I think I can't remember when Django Unchained came out. I think that was gonna come out
2012. Yeah,
it came out 2012, right? So yeah.
Yep.
So I knew, because I was a huge Tarantino fan. I still am, but at the time I was really excited about Django Unchained. I couldn't wait for that movie. So I knew Rango was kind of a play on the name Django, which Django Unchained is based off a character from the old westerns from like the 70s, like Sergio Leone westerns and all that stuff. So
right,
I watched that movie and I was like, oh cool, man, I'll name the lizard Django. And here she still lives a decade later.
She's still kicking. I had no idea that Rango was inspiration for your pet lizard.
Yep.
He the one thing about the movie that I never quite got over, and it's like just my own personal hang up, I thought that his, I guess, love interest in the movie just had like a really unsettling Beans had a really unsettling look to her. Like no problem with the character or anything, but just like her look, the way that like she had like the curly red hair with like the giant eyes, and she would occasionally like freeze,
Yeah,
and that was like part of like one of her issues. Her look just really bothered me for some reason.
she kind of
And
looked
it's
like the Susan Sarandon version of a lizard.
yeah, and it
Have you ever seen like Bull Durham? She's like,
mhm,
but I mean,
she
obviously, yeah,
did.
she's a lizard, so she looks weird. But she's got that same kind of Susan Sarandon hair, and Isla Fisher plays her, which she's wonderful. I always like her a
Yeah,
lot.
it's I like Isla Fisher too, but it is kind of weird casting to me to have like this spunky Australian actress voice this like good old girl from I forget, it's like a plantation or something that she lives on. It's got that like southern
Yeah,
drawl to her. I don't know.
like
It
you
was
think it should have been
interesting.
Reese Witherspoon or something.
She could have done it too. I mean,
I thought
she
it was her
probably would
actually at
have.
first when I was listening. I was like, "Is that Reese?"
It didn't sound like Isla Fisher. So I mean,
No.
credit to her, I guess.
Yeah.
For but yeah, I mean, I think that like overall, it's an elevated kids movie that I just think has like a lot more to offer beyond being a really good children's film.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, because Kat watched a little bit of it with me in the first part, and she was like, "Is this a children's film or an adult film?" Because it seems to be more adult themed. And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of more catered towards adults because it pays a lot of those like tips the hat to a lot of those movies that we all loved growing up." And then like, I
Right.
don't know. I mean, yeah, there's drinking's a thing, guns is a thing. I don't know if there's much real sex in
You
there, but
you spend a significant portion of the film with Rango talking to an armadillo who's missing the middle of his body.
yeah.
So that's a little unsettling for a child, I feel like.
'Cause, I mean, it's pretty violent. It's a violent movie.
It is. It's violent, and the characters, they look scary to some children, I would imagine,
Yeah.
particularly like Rattlesnake Jake or even some of the bats.
Yeah, I don't think I would let my kid watch this until they're like, I don't know, like
11,
12.
12, yeah.
Yeah. Because it is pretty heavy on the violence and whatever. But that's 37-year-old father talking now, so.
I was actually just reading on this note that the state of California issued a complaint against this film because it contains 60 instances of smoking
Oh, yeah.
and
Drug
says
paraphernalia. Tobacco use, no good.
because of this, some anti-smoking organizations petitioned for the film to receive an R rating instead of the PG rating received by the Motion Picture Association. That's kind of wild.
It's a bit much. Oh, shit, man. This kind of blows my mind.
What's that?
Wow. Roger Deakins is the cinematographer.
Yeah, and the composer is Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it does say cinematography consultant in parentheses, but it says cinematography by Roger Deakins. So, wow, that's
Well, yeah, because it's an animated film, so
yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah. True,
he's
true,
not
true.
shooting it, but he's. I mean, Deakins has had a pretty big role in a lot of
Yeah, did he do the
animation
dragon?
consultant. Yeah, the Dragon movies.
Yeah,
So that's like not a new thing for him. But this
that's
movie,
cool.
this movie had like tons of big names attached to it.
Yeah, Hans Zimmer. Wow. Well, I guess he did the Pirates theme too, right?
Right. So I mean, it's probably just a partnership with Verbinski.
Very cool. Well, yeah, man. I mean, fun movie. Love the way it ended. I love how Jake the Snake is this terrifying villain. Yeah, you find out that the mayor of the town, the Turtle Man, which what you said was funny was before we started.
Yeah, it's voiced by Ned Beatty, who also voices Lotso Huggin' Bear in Toy Story 3, and they're very, very similar characters.
Yeah, very similar. But he ends
Nice
up
and
being,
welcoming, nice and welcoming. You want to love them. You think that they're like
yeah,
the good guys, but really they're a seedy piece of shit.
yeah. It turns out he was the reason that the water supply was so low, and he was redirecting it.
Yeah, like through the pipeline, like he was shutting it off. It was kind of like feeding through the city at some point, you learn, because Rango crosses the road to the other side
Yeah,
and finds Las Vegas and some weird like cactus creatures that are, I don't know, there's some weird shit in this movie.
yeah. But I like once Jake the Snake realizes that the mayor kind of tries to screw him over too. That he kind of sweeps them away in the end and
Right.
gives Rango, a tip of the hat, like one legend to another. So I like that. I always like when I am a sucker for when the main, or what seems to be like the main antagonist or bad guy, which Timothy Oliphant's also really good at this, especially in like The Girl Next Door or something like that. But I love it when you got a guy who's kind of the bad guy, but then he sort of is the good guy in the end because he's just so cool and he respects the person that he was just going up against. He's like, fuck yeah, man. Like, all right, I respect you. All right, I'll get out of here later.
So, I mean, you're talking about like the scene in Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy where Vince Vaughn kisses Will Ferrell on the forehead. And he says, with every fiber of my being, I downright hate you, but god damn it, do I respect you.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I love
just
that.
for some reason what I thought about when you said that.
No, I mean, it's good. I mean, I love that sort of dynamic. I always, it's always tough when you have one end of the spectrum that's like way far this way, and then the other end of the spectrum that's way far that way. It's like, I like it when the good, the bad can sort of meet in the middle a little bit, and a little bit of compromise, a little bit of love. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Jake the Snake is just a henchman, so
Yeah,
it's kind of nice to see Rango earn his place, so to speak, in the Old West, because Jake the Snake is more of a figure that you would probably see in an Old Western. He has a name that's reminiscent of characters from those types of films. So it is a good dynamic, and I think it's like one of the many reasons this movie worked for a lot of people, became a big hit, made a lot of money for a March release, and then obviously had success with the Oscars. There was briefly talks of a sequel.
oh yeah,
That's not going to happen. However, like just last week, Gore Verbinski announced he's going to return to animation with 2 films in the next 3 years that are like a similar style.
huh?
So we'll have to see how that goes.
Why not Rango? What's wrong? What's going on with Johnny Depp these days? Everything cool?
Yeah, is he okay? I mean, he's there's nothing wrong with him, right? He's one of those guys that's like it's strange because he's not fully canceled. Like he's not in the Kevin Spacey zone,
No.
but he's in the zone where like it's just kind of unsettling to think about him or bring him up.
Yeah, he's gotten to that like sort of creep zone. Like it's a little creepy. I don't know.
He's just a kind of a creepy dude that lives, from what I understand, he like lives on a private island that he bought and like just drinks a bunch of wine.
Yeah, I mean, I love Johnny Depp for the longest time. I mean, but the guy, he did too many drugs. He's like he's worn thin, man. He's probably, I don't know. I hope he can find some peace and become better. But he's been rode hard, and I always hated that saying, rode hard, but he's just
Actors aren't the most stable people either.
He's ridden himself just to this place that is kind of dark and not great. But I'd argue that he wanted this fate too for himself. I mean, he was always such a huge fan of Hunter S. Thompson, and that's sort of the same thing that happened to him as well. So maybe that's just sort of the road he's decided to travel. And good luck, man.
I just think that the choices with his career to kind of reflect someone who's not really interested in being a movie star anymore.
Yeah.
And this is actually like, I think it'll be a theme of this episode because the three movies we're talking about aren't all that consequential in the grand scheme of things. Like they're kind of movies that, you know, I'm sure that like Lincoln Lawyer you might not even like remember existed, but they all have movie stars that I do think have really fascinating careers and were kind of in a interesting period of that career, like right around this time. Because I think for Johnny Depp, after Rango is when it all just fucking craters at this point. Because he's coming off of
All the Pirates movies are done, right? Pirates 4 come
he's
out.
he's doing the Pirates movies. The third one comes out in '07. He gets an Oscar nomination for Sweeney Todd and The Demon Barber of Fleet Street, which he's great in. I think that that's like a good Depp movie.
Very good.
But then he does Alice in Wonderland, which is a piece of trash. He does The Tourist, which is like also
Bad.
garbage with
Bad,
Angelina
bad.
Jolie. And he does Rango, and people are kind of feeling good about him. As I mean, it's a voice performance, but still. And then it's just like he does another Pirates of the Caribbean movie, like without the same actors as the first three.
I kind of like the fourth one though. That was kind of cool.
I mean,
I like the weird, crazy
Fountain of Youth. Is it the Fountain of Youth one?
demon mermaids. I don't know. I feel
I
like
mean,
we don't need to talk about this
yeah,
very long, but
I haven't revisited Pirates of the Caribbean in a while,
I always
but
love some Jack Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow is a great character. But he does like Dark Shadows, The Lone Ranger, Transcendence, Mordecai. These are all movies that got
All
fucking trashed by critics. They were box office bombs. The only thing that he kind of had success with was Black Mass, where he plays Whitey Bulger. But even like that movie's
Yeah.
not very good. He got
Yeah, it was in
some
poor taste too, man. I didn't like. I
yeah,
didn't enjoy that movie.
he got some acclaim for just like the transformation that he did to play the role, but it's just not a very good movie. And then he tries to do some sort of a reclamation project by being in these Fantastic Beasts movies, like with in the Harry Potter universe, and those end up sucking too. So he's really done nothing good in my opinion since Rango.
Yeah.
So kind of a shame, but whatever. Clearly he's like not a great guy, so that is what it is. All right. I think that does it for Rango. What do you want to do next?
So we got Lincoln Lawyer and we got Limitless. Thomas and I have very polarizing opinions on these two films.
I wouldn't even say, all right,
I don't.
let's do Lincoln Lawyer, because I kind of want to start with my reasoning for why I brought this movie up as one that I thought would be worth covering.
Yeah, and I think too, we'll talk about these movies together as well. So like, we can.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's right that we should start with Lincoln Lawyer.
So Lincoln Lawyer, it's based on a novel by Michael Connelly, who's to my understanding, he falls in that James Patterson, John Grisham zone of Lee Child is another one. These authors that just mass produce thrillers.
Novels.
Right. They're dad novels. Stuff that dad picks up in the airport and reads on the plane. That's always what I think about.
Were you reading these things were you taking these books from your dad when he was done with them and reading them?
I actually did. I went through a period. I don't know if it was in this period of college, but there was a time in college where just like I would get bored over the summer, and I read a lot of these James Patterson whatever books.
Okay.
So I was familiar with Lincoln Lawyer from that, but also, and this is something that we kind of debated over text. I always kind of understood this movie as the beginning of the reconnaissance, and that became known as a fundamental time in pop culture because Matthew McConaughey was popular for a while. He was a hit in rom coms, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, The Wedding Planner. He was a hit even before that with stuff like Dazed and Confused. He would pop up in A Time to Kill, speaking of John Grisham.
Dude, no, Time
Um,
to Kill. That that's a
A Time to
classic.
Kill is a great movie. I think he's great in it.
That's from like the mid '90s, though, right?
Correct. So that's even like
That's
before.
like that's just like just after Dazed and Confused. Not too
Dazed
far
and
off.
Confused is 93, Time to Kill is 96. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But he's going through a phase in the 90s where he's like his stardom is rising. He
Like it's hotter. He's hot.
Yeah, he's getting hotter.
Sexy.
He
Look at
becomes a
that.
sex symbol in the early
Ah,
2000s too
he's
with
got to do the rom coms.
right with the rom-coms. And then where I personally think we were having this conversation about the dude tends to be good, but he does some like really bad movies. He does Failure to Launch, which I know some people stand up for. I think that movie is really bad.
I like it. I love that movie. I think
Do
it's
you?
great. I mean,
Do
it's fun.
you?
It's a funny movie. I don't know. Bradley Cooper's in that. Oh shit! Remember that?
Yeah, Bradley Cooper is in that movie.
I didn't even make that connection until just now. But no, I think Failure to Launch is good. It's funny. I mean, it's not a good movie, but I highly enjoyed it when I watched it. I mean, I haven't probably watched it in like 10 years, but man, Terry Bradshaw, come on, that shit's great.
I don't have fond memories. I'll say that I've not watched it in a long time.
I am a
Um,
sucker though for rom coms, so don't. So
I
like,
yeah,
you like
I am
lawyer,
too.
you like lawyer trash, stories and or shows or whatever, and
We prefer legal dramas.
I love, I love rom coms. I do like they can be kind of shitty ones, and I'll still watch it.
I love a good rom com. I think even shitty ones are watchable. Not a fan of Failure to Launch. Not a fan of Fool's Gold, which is another one he did
I never saw that.
right around that time. Not a fan of Ghost of Girlfriends Past, which is
Yeah,
another one
didn't
he
see
did
that.
right around that time. He does Tropic Thunder, which
Mm,
is one of my
awesome.
favorite McConaughey performances ever.
Yeah,
He's not a star of that movie. He's just a side piece and kind of like a self parody of himself
yeah.
in the process.
He's someone's agent, right? Is it Ben
He's
Stiller's
Ben
agent?
he's Ben
Yeah,
Stiller's agent.
yeah.
His name is Rick. His name is Rick Peck. He calls himself the Pecker. Um, and there's a
Yeah, he was
great
awesome in that.
storyline of him trying to get Ben Stiller TiVo while on set in Vietnam. And he's just really funny. He's great in that movie. But again, not really a starring role for him. He goes through a period between '05 and 11 where he really just does one drama. It's We Are Marshall, the only dramatic film he makes.
This is pretty good. That's a good movie.
Um, that's a movie that I like. I'm a
For a sports
sucker.
movie, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for like uplifting sports movies, though. And that movie's actually written by someone that, like random fact, it was written by someone that graduated from my film program in college.
Oh wow,
So we don't have like a ton of success stories, but he was one of them.
that's cool.
So yeah, The Lincoln Lawyer is his first major dramatic role in about 5 years. I think a lot of people kind of saw it as kind of turning a corner for him. The movie was pretty well liked by critics because it got an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was like a moderate hit at the box office. It wasn't super successful, but it made some money. And then he turns around and does the Richard Linklater film Bernie and gets a lot of praise for that in the same year. He makes Mud and Magic Mike in 2012. Gets a
Yeah, I
lot of
remember. I remember
praise.
Mud being like a big deal.
It was a big deal for him. A lot of people like praising that performance. And then all of a sudden, he's Dallas Buyers Club wins an Oscar, Interstellar, star of a big Christopher Nolan movie, makes a ton of money, and he's back. And then he kind of goes away again in terms of like being a major movie star. But I feel like his persona as a movie star is very well defined by the Lincoln Lawyer. And maybe that's because he does commercials about driving Lincolns. And I just kind of like associate that.
Dude, I never made that association with the. I don't. I always thought the Lincoln Lawyer was going to be like. Kat and I were talking about this. We are like, oh, it just like thought he was just a guy that like loves Abraham Lincoln or something, and like goes by like some specific morals, or like he's this good man who like has this. I don't know. I was not at all thinking about
the vehicle,
the fucking car, a Lincoln. So when that shit happened in the movie, I was like, oh my God, is this where all this started? Come on.
Also, the fact that he sits in the back of a Lincoln has nothing to do with the movie at all. Like, it's completely innocuous.
Well, it kind of does, because that's how he travels around. He's the Lincoln Lawyer, because he travels around in a Lincoln. That's how cheesy this movie is.
Right, but that has nothing to do with any of like the plot developments in the film. Like,
no, not really, I guess. But I mean, it's a character in the film, I would say, because
I feel like he could have been in an office and it would have been the same movie.
No, man, because then you don't have like a biker gang coming after you, in the office.
Setting that tone for the kind of lawyer that he is. I think it's like in the first, like one of the first scenes where the biker gang comes up and he's like, I got an expert coming in from New York. He wants first class hotel. He wants to sit and coach or whatever, or sit in business. I'm doing a bad McConaughey impression, but basically like tricks the bikers into giving him $10,000, even though there is no expert or whatever.
Yeah. I found his character honestly to just be like, and at least in the very beginning of the film, I was like, this guy is awful. Like, he is so annoying. He is just like so into himself, and he's got these like weird like one-liners, and yeah, he's very like sleazy, and the fact that he like tricks people out of their money, and I don't know, the whole like I don't work if I'm not getting paid, like all that stuff and whatever. Like, I don't know, but I was like, okay, I know this is gonna be like one of those stories of like, he's going to come around and he's going to have a conscience and he's going to be a better man for it. So that's what I was waiting for.
Which he does. But did it really last? I mean, who knows?
No, I mean, yeah, in the middle of the movie, which is the best part of the movie, he does have this. He realizes that he like put the wrong guy in prison.
Anyway, so
I'm getting off track.
I'll wrap up my spiel. When I was prepping for us to do the movies of 2011, I was kind of going through everything I had seen and kind of like ranking where I kind of remembered them being on a scale of good to bad. And I had Lincoln Lawyer like pretty high. I think like 16 or something like that, which is why I was like, I remember this being good. We should cover it. And then you're watching it and you're telling me that you think it's really bad and this movie's awful, and I'm thinking to myself, am I just like misremembering? Because I was 17, 18 when I watched it, so I'm thinking maybe I'm just having a bad memory about what this movie is. So I rewatched it, and where I landed is I don't think this movie's good. I maybe thought I did back then, but I think this movie is fine. I think it's like one of the more aggressively fine movies I've ever seen, because I don't really have much to argue with on the side of it being good. And as far as it being bad, I'm just like, I like Law and Order. I like,
Yeah, I mean,
I like kind of melodramatic legal thrillers that are somewhat a whodunit, and then also more. I like that part of a legal thriller where you figure out who the bad guy is kind of early, and then it's more so figuring out how are we going to take him down. And I'm kind of into that for some reason, and that's very much what this movie is.
yeah, and that's totally fine. And you're right, the movie is fine. It is fine. Like I still enjoyed it. Like I would say I enjoyed it until like the last third, maybe like the last what.
Basically, when the mom shows up in the apartment,
Yeah,
is
like
that
that
the
was
part where
just
it loses you? The
so.
part,
So no, for me, like it was. I mean, it's a very predictable movie, right? Like, I mean, the moment Ryan Felipe shows up, I'm like, oh my god, this fucking guy. Like,
well, he's a murderer. Like,
yeah, like, and I mean, like, no, offense, Ryan, out there, you might be a fine man, and I've actually seen him in roles that he's actually pretty good in. This one, I'm like, wow, he's bad. But he clearly is like full of shit from the get go, and then yeah, the whole dynamic with his mother, like wanting to find him the best representation. But you find early on that he kind of handpicks the Lincoln lawyer to be his lawyer, and which really, I don't know, it still doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like he could have gotten like a good lawyer and not him, who had a direct connection to a dude that took the blame for one of his murders. Like
well,
it's stupid. Like
in a
why would you do that?
in a very expository scene, William H. Macy explains it to you when Matthew McConaughey goes over there, and they're like, "Look, here we go. Details of the Donna Renteria case, which is like a murder that happened years ago, and Mick, the main character, failed to get
Hector.
more than a plea bargain for Hector,
Yeah,
or Jesus, or whatever his name was.
I thought it was Hector.
Played by Michael Pena, who's a great actor.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love him.
In his two scenes, he's really.
He should have
good.
been in the movie more, man.
Yeah, he was a good character.
And that's another problem I'll bring up that I had with the movie. Like fucking these characters just like disappear. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, where do they go?
Anyway, William H. Macy like describes. There's like one part where they're kind of like going over the details, and he's like, "So it's not just about killing the bitch for this guy. He gets his jolly by getting the other guy to get blamed for it. Son of a bitch."
Oh my god, dude.
And like spelling out the whole thing for you.
The writing in this movie is so bad. It's like again, it's like it's like soap opera /
but
television crime drama.
It's the kind of writing that, in my experience, works in books because you're reading it and you're just kind of like flowing along,
you're playing it out in your own head,
and you're like, oh shit, and like one thing's happening, and you're like, oh man, so he's actually doing this, and he's getting the other guy to get blamed for it. But when you're watching really talented actors, which this movie is loaded with, like Ryan Phillippe aside, I don't like Ryan Phillippe. I don't think I've ever like once liked him in anything, honestly. But William H. Macy, Marissa Tomei, Michael Pena, Josh Lucas, Bryan Cranston. It's got like so many character actors that have been great in other things. And it asks someone with the talent of Marissa Tomei, who I love and we'll talk about later in the year in Crazy Stupid Love, which is a better movie and a better performance. But there's like a scene where McConaughey sends her documents that are supposed to serve as proof that the Phillippe character received a parking ticket near the home of Donna Renteria on the night that she was murdered. And McConaughey's sitting there and he gets a call, and Tomei's like, "Hello, Mick. Yes, you were absolutely right. We got those documents and it's exactly what it proves. Great job." And that's like the extent of the scene. Yeah. And it's just it just plays so bad on screen.
Yeah, and I didn't buy their relationship That's not real, dude. You don't get divorced and then you still like love each other that much, man. They were basically still married, like, and they had okay, so they shared a daughter, right? And they want to maintain.
I bought that. They like to fuck. They're both hot. They have sex.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
guess maybe it's because I'm not super hot like either one of them, but they obviously, yeah. I mean, you have a daughter together. You know, want to keep the relationship healthy so you can continue to raise the daughter, but yeah, I don't know. All that was weird to me. Like, okay, so maybe my biggest qualm with the film was the editing. It was so bad. Like, that movie jumps all over the place. Like, it goes from one scene to another, and sometimes scenes just end before they're even over. And then, like, yeah, like, there'll be one character, like Michael Pena, you mentioned, who's great, and they talk about him, who I thought was the most interesting part of the film. Like, he was the most interesting thing, that, like, he got put in prison, which this happens in real life. Like, you know, we've talked about this before, people being imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit. And this dude's Hispanic. He's a minority. He was taken advantage of, and he was fucking given a life prison sentence for something he clearly didn't do. And this because this white asshole got away with it. Rich white asshole got away with it. And but then, like, Matthew McConaughey realizes that Mick, the Lincoln lawyer who drives around in a Lincoln, realizes that, and he tries to make it right, which is like a big thing in the movie. Like, he says it like 4 times. I got to make it right. I'm just trying to make it right. There's a great dialogue.
Just want to make it right.
And then, like, you don't. He finally makes it right, and you don't even get the gratification, the satisfaction of seeing Michael Pena, Hector, getting out of prison, being happy and going back to his family. Like, that's how the movie should have ended, not like McConaughey being like, hey, that guy got in trouble with 50 pounds of cocaine or heroin, and he's dating the girl whose husband's a cop. Oh, yeah. I'll take that case for free. Get him back on the streets. No problem. I'm like, God damn it, man. Fuck this guy.
He's got to show you he's still going to be the Lincoln lawyer.
Oh, man. Yeah, the way that shit ended, I was like, because he was just right back at the end where he was in the beginning, being just a conceited asshole who I don't know, man. I was pissed. I wanted to see Hector. I want to see how he's doing. I wanted him to, you know.
I'll say on to the first thing you said about the editing in the film. I think that watching The Lincoln Lawyer and Limitless back to back, and I'm not going to get entirely into Limitless. I think that movie does a lot of visual things that are really cool, but you could kind of tell when you watch them how much they're like of a different era. Like, I feel like the 10-year difference between then and now is kind of pointed when I watch these two movies. And you'll probably feel that way more about Lincoln Lawyer. But there's something about like the color grading of both films where, like, and I know in Limitless it's very much on purpose because they're trying to create this contrast between what it's like when you're not on the pill versus what it's like when you are on the pill. But in Lincoln Lawyer, you're right that it's cut a lot like Law and Order, which is sometimes jarring in a feature film. But they do these flashbacks throughout where it goes from a normal looking movie to this like grainy kind of grayish color gradient that just like looks kind of boring and murky.
Yeah.
And that was one issue. I didn't think the use of flashbacks was necessarily bad from a storytelling perspective, but I did think that they were very poorly executed filmmaking wise. Like, there was a way to do them that would have been more interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't take you mentioned the flashbacks. Those were tough to swallow as well. They were just and then the narrations over them and the way they were filmed and like cut back and forth. I don't know. It didn't flow great with me. I also want to say Michael Pena's character was Jesus Martinez. I don't know
Okay.
where the hell I got Hector from, but I thought there was a Hector somewhere in the movie. Maybe it was when he was talking to that security officer
No,
about
that was Ronaldo.
getting Harold out. Okay, see, now I'm just mixing up names. But anyway, I apologize to that character. Michael Pena plays, it's actually Martinez.
Jesus.
Jesus Martinez.
I will. I want to ask you: did the movie ever surprise you? Were you ever? Was there any point in the movie where you were like, "Oh man, I didn't see that coming"? Because you mentioned it as predictable.
Um, I guess. Well, I didn't really expect William H Macy's character to. I wasn't expecting him to be killed. I don't know. I didn't see that coming because I was like, oh, he's such a likable character. This wasn't something I thought would happen, but I see why it did for the story. And then also when he was, I hated that he went ahead with the trial and got Ryan Felipe's character off. But also I saw him, like, I saw what he was doing, but at the same time I was kind of like, oh man, like I wanted him to like stick it to him when he was on the stand, and like basically I wanted him to go to
But he
jail for that.
can't. He can't attorney-client privilege, as the movie
Yeah,
talks about like repeatedly.
yeah, I know. I just
Well, that
I
was
get,
that was the
yes.
whole MO of the Philippi, whatever the fuck his name is. That was the whole motive of that character, was to hire Mickey Holler because he worked the Jesus Martinez case, and basically get him in a position to where Mickey couldn't possibly testify or come forward with any evidence that might tie him into this other crime because of attorney-client privilege or whatever. Um, does that make sense in legal terms? I have no idea. I would imagine probably not. I would think like if your client tells you, "Hey, I murdered somebody else unrelated to the case you're working with me," then you can be like, "Oh, hey, just heads up, this guy's a murderer." Um, but anyway, I did like I was curious what the feelings were in this movie back then, so I like went back and listened to like old podcasts from 2011 just to kind of hear what people's thoughts were. And one of the reviews kind of echoed what I said, which was that because this is like one of the most okay movies ever made, because it's not really about big twists. It has like 7 miniature twists that don't really mean anything. And when they happen, you're just like, okay, okay, like, and that's like the
Yeah.
experience of watching the watching the film.
Yeah.
I I was like kind of surprised by the mini twists throughout, that really that Ryan Phillippe was so fucked up that he, had this whole convoluted scheme to hire the McConaughey character, and then the fact that he murdered William H. Macy and was trying to frame Matthew McConaughey for that murder. Like, I was kind of surprised just how evil he was. So I guess that kept my interest.
No,
But
though he did not murder William H Macy's
oh, he
character. The
didn't.
mother did.
He didn't.
That was kind of the big twist in the end, which was so also like just very
I
cringe
kind of
worthy.
had I kind of had already forgotten that. I just watched it yesterday.
Okay, so this was my biggest gripe with the movie as far as just not liking it, and it was like three sequences in a row. It was okay. McConaughey got him off, Ryan Felipe's character, Lewis, whatever, but then he gets rearrested for the murder of the other girl that Martinez was in prison for,
Right.
because of the description of the tattoos from the witness in the holding cell, or whatever. But then they didn't have enough to hold him. They didn't have enough evidence to hold him. So then Lewis gets out, Ryan Felipe's character. So then, we didn't even mention this guy, of course, who I'm a huge fan of. Where the hell is he? Because there are so many people.
Which character?
The dude who like gets him the case in the beginning.
Oh, John Leguizamo.
John Leguizamo. Jesus. Okay. Wait, he's not even listed here. Going down. Oh wait, there he is. I'm just blind. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, he goes back to John Leguizamo, he's the guy like responsible for putting the ankle bracelet on Lewis, and he's like tracking him for him. You know, Mick calls him. He's like, "Can you still track him?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not taking his ankle bracelet off until tomorrow morning, so I can still track him." And he's going towards his house, the Lincoln lawyer's house, and then he's like, "Oh wait, no, he's not going to my house. I know where he's going." And then he calls his ex-wife, Marissa Tomei, and seeing how they're doing. She's like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry. Our daughter's at my sister's." And he's like, "All right, you get over there right now. You go over there too." And she's like, "All right, I will do that." And then he's over there sitting on the porch. Ryan Felipe shows up. You know, it's clear what's happening here. It's all very poorly executed on his part. Felipe makes some threats, and then McConaughey basically has his biker gang buddies like come and rough him up, and just as he says, just hospital. Don't kill him.
Morgue.
Put him
Hospital, not the morgue.
And then that's it. Like, you don't see Lewis anymore, Ryan Felipe's character. Like, he's done. He's out of the movie.
No, all done.
And then he goes back to his apartment. Oh, the best part was he calls up Marissa Tomei and he's like, "Hey, everything's okay now. Let me come pick you up, you and the daughter, and let's go get some dinner." And she's like, "Oh."
And she goes, "That sounds great. Thanks."
That sounds so great. Okay. Whee! And then he gets back to his apartment, and the mother's there, and it's like clear, like, okay, yeah, like she's the mastermind behind all this. Okay, yeah, okay, of course, that's how it's gonna unfold. And then he basically is like, "Get the hell out of my house." Turns his back to her, which is incredibly stupid. And then, of course, she shoots him with the old gun. The woodsman. And but luckily, he had gotten himself a unmarked pistol from his driver. Played wonderfully, I will say, by Lawrence Mason. He was awesome as Earl, the driver. Definitely one of my favorite characters in the movie. And then that's it. And then he gets out of the hospital. Like the next scene, again, the editing, it's just like goes from that big, huge twist to like, "All right, I'm out of the hospital now. Oh man, I told you to be careful." "Oh, okay." And they drive off. Biker gang comes back. You know, as I mentioned earlier, he decides to do that case for Old Harold from the very beginning for free because they helped him beat the shit out of Ryan Felipe, and the movie's over. It's just so stupid.
The last 10 minutes are really bad. I won't dispute that. I think that it's like, that's exactly how a lot of these books kind of go to, where you're so, they call them page turners. You're just like so engaged in what's happening.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of like end randomly. Like, really? That was it? What the fuck? And this movie is like no exception to that sort of formula. But I don't know. The first, you say you like the middle. I like the beginning. Then there's like a 10-minute stretch that I think is really bad. I like most of it from when Michael Pena is introduced until the mom shows up at his house or whatever. Like that stretch, I'm kind of into it. I don't know. It's hard to argue for a movie that I just think is like 6 out of 10.
No, it's true. And we're probably talking about it way too
Yeah.
too long. But yeah, it was fine.
That is something real, like we were doing this over text, rating movies. Maybe that's something we should start doing just to kind of like leave it with a definitive measurement of like where we are with it. So I forgot to do it with Rango, but I was gonna give Rango like an 8 out of 10. I don't know if you'd be different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, an 8. No, that sounds right.
And then
Giving Lincoln Lawyer a 4.
yeah, all right. You're a 4 with this. I'm like a.
That's being generous.
See, there's this other podcast I listen to that uses this phrase called a gentleman's 6,
Yeah.
which means that like it's really a 5, but like on a good day it's a 6. And that's how I feel about this movie.
Okay.
Anyway, that's The Lincoln Lawyer. It's a whatever film made in March 2011 that probably wouldn't get made today. It also features some like wildly insensitive dialogue at times that I just feel like would not fly in 2021.
No.
I think the Philippi character uses homophobic slurs plenty.
Oh yeah, man.
In just like completely crass ways, and then they like repeatedly use the phrase bitch to describe women, and it's just it's not woke, for lack of a better word. But that's Lincoln Lawyer. We'll wrap that up and we'll move on now to Limitless. All right. I'll let you start with Limitless.
I mean, I just like with Limitless from the very get-go, that movie has just like pop. And for me, I don't know. All movies are different for everyone, but for me, that movie is just a really nice, smooth roller coaster ride of like just it's one scene after another. I think it's really well edited. It's very well shot. I love the snappy dialogue. It's real quick. It's real fast. The whole movie kind of just goes by really, I don't know, I say smooth and a roller coaster in the same sentence, but like it's just, I think, a very well made popcorn film about this guy that discovers this smart pill that, quote unquote, we use 20% of our brains, and now with this pill you can use 100% of your brain.
which is totally bullshit science.
Which is bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't use 20% of our brain, but the movie has plenty of flaws in its own right. But I just think the acting is a lot better. I mean, okay, I'm already comparing it to Lincoln Lawyer, but I'll just talk about the movie first. I think you have a great cast to start. You got Bradley Cooper. You have, hold on, I had the cinematographer up. Get these guys rolling. Yeah, directed by Neil Berger, who I wasn't really familiar with, and I hadn't seen this movie in I don't know, maybe like 8 or 9 years when it was the first time I watched it. But yeah, you got Robert De Niro.
He's mainly Neil Berger does a lot of TV now. Like he directed a lot of episodes of Billions.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I guess there's a movie coming out this year that he directed called Voyagers. But yeah, he actually, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I might be wrong about this. Never mind. I was gonna say I think he worked on a show that I was an assistant for in LA, but I'm thinking of someone else, I think. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think more so this movie is just filled with, I guess, okay, maybe not as star-studded as Lincoln Lawyer, but I mean, obviously you have your two top billers, which is Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro, but you have really good performances by actors that are otherwise somewhat unknown. I mean, you got Abby Cornish, who's like kind of a perfect mix of Charlize Theron and oh man, I just talked about this last night. I see her face.
You know a movie this person's in?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so bad with names, man. Lately, she's in the Marvel. She's Miss Marvel.
Brie Larson.
Yeah, thank you, Brie Larson. Yeah, she's like a perfect mix of Charlize Theron and Brie Larson. You know, like really good actress. Abby Cornish. I don't know. I can't think of anything else I've seen her in. Andrew Howard plays the guy that he gets a loan from, and kind of in the first like 30 minutes or so of the film, because this smart bill that he takes, basically he goes from like being a regular nice guy. He's got a girlfriend who just breaks up with him. He's a writer and he's just a mess. He's unorganized. He has writer's block. He can't get his shit together. And yeah, he like runs in one day to this dude that is the brother of this girl he was married to for like 5 minutes, like 10 years ago. And he looks great and they have a drink and he introduces him to this new miracle pill. And yeah, it pretty much just goes from there. I mean, it's a pretty simple movie. He gets this dude's stash because he goes back to his house wanting more. And then while he goes out for his dry cleaning and gets him some breakfast, he comes back to see him murdered and the whole apartment's ransacked. And clearly they were searching for something, and he finds what they were looking for because they didn't find it, which is a huge bag of these smart pills that he's able to basically live off of for that, whatever that ends up being, like a year.
NZT.
So yeah, and pretty much you go through the whole movie without knowing where NZT comes from.
Yeah, there's really I don't think they ever really described that.
Well, you find out in the very end. De Niro tells you.
Oh, from that pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
That he bought.
But no, man, I don't know. I just find this movie really enjoyable. I mean, like Bradley Cooper, I think puts on a great performance. He does become this kind of arrogant prick because he now has 100% access to his brain. So he basically uses it to corner the stock market. He goes to Wall Street. He comes up with these algorithms to invest and make lots of money. Like, wow, I think he turned like, what is it? I can't remember how much it was into $2 million, but
I think it was like $12,000.
Yeah, 12,000 to $2
million
in like a day or two or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of it's action packed. Again, the editing's really good. The cinematography kicks ass. The soundtrack kicks ass. I think all the performances are great. And now that I'm looking at the cast, I'm like, wow, I don't really know any of these actors that well. I mean, I know their faces, but yeah, you get Bradley Cooper and De Niro, and then a bunch of no names, kind of like giving their best. And I found it incredibly entertaining the first time I watched it, and then watching it again last night, I still feel the same way. I may have even enjoyed it more than I did 8 or 9 years ago.
Well, even Cooper wasn't like a super well known at the time that this came out. Like he had
He was still Hangover, right? He was big off that.
He had Hangover. This was like his first big leading role, I think, after The Hangover. And it was a hit. It was a successful movie. So much so they made a TV show based off of it in 2015 where Cooper reprises his role as what the hell in my video? That was weird.
There you are. Oh, it's messing up again.
That's strange.
And was that show in 2015?
Yeah.
Man, I thought that came out like 2 years ago.
I know it's weird. It was pretty recent, but anyway, it became a TV show where he's like a senator now that is giving pills to
Oh, he's still a
this other
senator?
guy. Yeah,
Wow.
I kind of like looked into this to figure out what the plot was of the TV show.
Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer to that and being like, nah. That's not
You're like
necessary.
the movie was entertaining, but I'm not going to watch a TV show based off of it.
No, I like the way it ended, and I don't need more.
Anyway, all this I don't like this movie. I didn't like it when I saw it in theaters. I went and saw it, I remember specifically at the Dollar Theater in Sarasota. I was like, I'll give it a shot because it's got De Niro and the guy from Hangover. And then I walked out and was like, I mean, that I just kind of shrugged. I was like, I didn't find it engaging. I didn't really find a character to attach to. That's kind of a big thing for me with movies. And I think McConaughey in Lincoln Lawyer, you're right about him being a conceited prick in his own right. But I think whatever. I'm not going to compare them right now. I can get past that with a movie like that where it's a legal drama that's more so about other shit going on outside the character. In this movie, I don't like the character at all, really. Even before he starts taking the pill, I kind of find him whiny and full of himself. Um, and then in the end, I kept expecting this movie to be a "be careful what you wish for" story, where it's all about, you know, these selfish pursuits of excellence, but that comes at a cost. And he's obviously getting threatened the entire movie, and he's always fearful for his life. And there's all of these drawbacks to the drug because his ex-wife was on it, and now she looks super fucked up, and she almost died, and it makes you like go through severe withdrawals, blah blah blah. But then he has that whole entire sequence where he sees just how dangerous it is, and then his resolve is to just get more pills and keep going. And he just keeps taking pills.
Well,
And
he
and
modifies them.
but I didn't even like that. That makes no sense to me. I think the end of this movie is so fucking convoluted, where he's just like, De Niro comes up to him and he's like, "I know you're on NZT. I bought the pharmaceutical company that makes it. Now you're my bitch and you're gonna work for me, and this is how it's gonna go." And Bradley Cooper's like, "Yeah, but you see, I don't need NZT because I don't care if you shut down my labs. I don't care if you do this because I'm off it. I've modified my blood now to like be able to operate as if I'm on NZT, even though I'm not taking the drug." And I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
what?
That's what I'm talking about.
What the fuck?
Yeah, he weaned himself off of it. It's like coming off, breastfeeding, bro. It's like breast milk. It's like now you can just take formula, and then you eventually start eating solids, and then you forget you've ever even taken it, and now you're still
That's exactly how it works. And I'm not even sure what his goal is in the end. Like, at first he just wanted money, but then I guess he wants power now too. So he's gonna run for senator. I'm not even really sure why he's doing
president.
that. He wants to be president. There's like a whole thing about his girlfriend and how he loves his girlfriend, but he was never good enough for her. She takes NZT and she's like, this. I took this drug, and this wasn't me. I just and you know what? You're on it, and it's not you, and I can't be a part of it. And I'm out. You figure your shit out. I hope you get off of it, but good luck to you, buddy. I'm gone. And then at the end of the movie, he's still, he's quote unquote off it, but he's still like himself on NZT. he's more of like a conceited, insufferable prick than ever before, and yet she still is with him. Like she wants to be with him at the end, despite telling him that if you stay on this drug, I can't be with you.
Well, he said he was going to get off it, and he did. That's all she needed.
But I don't understand. I really don't understand how he's off it and still being. I just.
Yeah, no, the movie has like major flaws,
plot holes.
100%.
So I couldn't. I like can't get past that shit with it. I'm just like so confused as to what it's even trying to say with the ending. Like he speaks Japanese to the guy and just kind of like looks at his girlfriend and smiles. And
like,
it's
what?
Like,
I love it.
That's the end of
Oh
the
my
film.
God, I love that. The ending's like my favorite part. Oh, it's so good. I also just love when things just cut to black like that. And, because he was showing off and she was like, come on now. There's that NZT talking again. Come on. We talked about this.
But it's kind of like Lincoln Lawyer to me with that romantic relationship where I don't think he's ever really less of a dick to her, but it still ends in her being like, great, sounds awesome. Let's all go to dinner and have a wonderful time.
No, yeah. And I think these movies are actually, they're bizarrely like comparable because even though I do think Limitless is it's a better made film as a whole. But with some of the biggest issues I had with Limitless, as far as it's just like stupid plot holes, are like, the guy that he gets the money from. So basically, he decides to go into the Wall Street and the stock market, and like, but he doesn't have enough money to like fund all his like crazy ideas. So he gets it from this, sketchy mob dude who's like, okay, like, what happens if you don't pay me back? I'm gonna like skin you and torture you until I get my money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, man, gotcha, totally. Then he goes and makes $2 million. I don't know how much he ended up borrowing, but he goes and makes $2 million in like one day, and then he stays in the same shitty apartment, and he like forgets to pay the guy back. Like he just doesn't pay it. Like, why wouldn't you pay him back? You made all the money back in like less than a day because of your smart pill. And then that dude comes after him. He ends up being the biggest kink in his plan because he ends up taking one of those pills.
I also hate that character. I hate like generic European thugs.
Oh, I loved him. I loved this
You
character. I thought he was great. Oh yeah, I thought he was great. Yeah, he's like a character like straight out of like Snatch or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
But he ends up becoming like the biggest problem for him, like, because he's wanting more and more pills, and then Bradley Cooper's like, well, man, I don't have any more. But of course it's making him smart too, but he's like an evil son of a bitch who's about to, like, he'll kill you or torture you like any chance he gets. So that was really stupid.
He learns that you could shoot MZT with like a syringe.
Yeah, that's right.
And it works. It lasts longer.
And then once he kills him there in the end, the only way for him to take NZT, because he had taken the last pill,
drink the guy's blood.
Drink the dude's blood after he stabbed him. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But from a pure entertainment aspect, I thought it was wildly entertaining and a lot of fun.
I don't begrudge that. A lot of people had very similar takeaways from the movie.
Yeah, and it's just a fun movie. Not many movies like it, really. I mean, when you break it down.
I guess not, but it does kind of like fall into a category for me of nonsense sci-fi thrillers. Like there's a lot of those where it's like just kind of based off a wacky premise where it's like, what if this, but that? And it's kind of like just a whole movie about that idea. Like the Scarlett Johansson movie Lucy is based on a very similar concept of
I've always wanted to watch that.
Some sort of drug that
I
remember.
And it's because it's the same guy that How do you pronounce his name? The director, the guy that did Fifth Element. Besson.
Luc Besson.
Luc Besson. Yeah.
I'll say one more thing I didn't like, and then I do have some things I did like about it. I do, and it could be the writing that contributes to this. I don't particularly like Bradley Cooper's performance, and I don't like the voiceover most of all. I think the voiceover is just like way too expository. Like it's just kind of like over explaining things that it doesn't really need to explain. And then Cooper, who is someone that I wasn't really a fan of until Silver Linings Playbook. And then after he had that performance and kind of showed a more vulnerable side to him and to his like sensibilities as an actor, I found a lot more to like about him. And I love him in that. And I love him in A Star is Born. I love him in American Sniper. He's just had a lot of performances that I think are really great. But I was reading a funny article from back then when I was doing some research that was like, there's something about Bradley Cooper where he just kind of has a punchable face. And I kind of got that about this character. There was just something about him where I just really wanted to punch him for some reason.
He looks like the character from Wedding Crashers,
Right. I mean, it's the same thing. That guy,
or Failure to Launch.
He's good at playing assholes because I think he has this look where it's like, oh, that dude's just like a fucking Nantucket prick, like a full of himself, way smarter than he thinks he is. It's part of the problem I have with the movie. I don't know if it's the movie's fault, but it's about a guy that becomes insanely smart, except he really can only become as smart as the screenwriter, because the screenwriter is the one that's like writing his dialogue. And I don't know if I bought him as super smart. Anyway, that's the end of my gripes. I did like a lot of the visuals in the film, and it's pretty much the only thing that redeemed it for me. Was
soundtrack's great too.
It's a good soundtrack, but I like the cinematography. I like some of the editing choices, and I like kind of that stylistic choice to show a passage of time by multiplying the character and showing like multiple versions of them in the same space, and kind of using that as a visual method to illustrate what it's like to have that sort of heightened awareness.
And that continued zoom too, where it just doesn't stop zooming.
Right.
I love that effect. I feel like at the time that was kind of somewhat of like a groundbreaking effect. I don't know if I can recall seeing that before Limitless, at least to that extent. But I thought that was really cool. I remember that standing out the first time I watched it, and then watching it again, I was like, oh yeah, like I really like the way this was shot.
Imagine watching that thing in 3D. I feel like it'd break your brain. Especially if you're like high on something while you're watching it.
Yeah, and also going back to one of the gripes that you and I both agree on is the whole 20%. You use 20% of your brain, but now you can use 100% of your brain. First off, if you could use 100% of your brain, you're fucking moving shit with your mind. Like you're like a superhero, X-Men, something. Like you can, control people's minds and all that stuff. I think they really should have capped it at like, okay, well, forget the 20% is also bullshit, because I think, what do we use? How much do we use of our brain? Like 4%? Something really small.
So like I think what it ends up being is that you use all of your brain, but you use like different pieces of it for different things.
But
So like,
collectively, how much do you use?
I don't know what that number is. Yeah, like
Percentage.
that's kind of like the limit. That's the limitation in the limitless idea is that you don't use all of your brain at one time. You use bits and pieces of it to process different information. There's the piece that like is associated with memory. There's the piece that's associated with like just like different reactions to things, but you never like use all of your brain at one time.
Interesting. According to the survey from 2013, around 65% of Americans believe that we only use 10% of our brain. But this is just a myth, according to an interview with neurologist Barry Gordon in Scientific America. He explained that the majority of the brain is almost always active, which is kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah, it's always active. It's just like only a certain amount that you access at one time.
Okay, so if you can access 100% of your brain at all times, I guess
Then you'd be limitless.
according to the movie Limitless, this is what happens. See, I think they should have. I think they should have brought that down a little bit, like capped it at like 78% or something. Like you can access 78% of your brain at all times, and then it leaves a little bit more to go after.
I'm just picturing the pitch room where someone walks in, he's like, all right, listen. So y'all know how we only use 20% of our brains, right? And they're sitting around like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but you're saying it, so I assume it's right. They're like, what if you used all of it?
Oh shit.
It is. I mean, I don't think that. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. There's a reason that I think the trailers from my memory were like kind of silly because it was all sort of built around that silly premise.
Yeah.
But it's a well-made film that I think my biggest problems with it are narratively. I just like don't get behind the story, even if I think it's perfectly well constructed. Just not a story that I go for.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's just the movies, right? We all love what we love, we hate what we hate, and
It's all subjective. It's all taste based.
life goes on.
All right. So where do you arrive in your score for Limitless?
Level, I think I gave it an 8, but that's probably being a real way generous.
Now this probably isn't something that you'd anticipate to find its way into your top 10 at the end of the year.
No, I don't think so.
There's probably better stuff out there.
Definitely.
Would you take this or Rango? Is that kind of the zone for you? Like similar?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go Rango. So, I guess I'd bump Limitless to like maybe a 7.
I think a 7's fine.
Yeah, I think it's too generous.
I'm at a 4 with it, which is like where you are with Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah.
For two movies that came out 10 years ago and maybe aren't super relevant today, we talked about them for an hour. So I think that's pretty good. You have anything left to say your piece on Limitless before we wrap up?
Not really. Just, again, pure adrenaline rush, fun movie. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I liked it. Maybe even loved it for some of it. That's about it.
And that's perfectly okay. we're not always going to align. Limitless, not great for me. Lincoln Lawyer, okay. Rango, great. And that about sums up this month's episode. So we will leave you with that. We'll come back in April. Possibly there's a world where that's our first episode in a year that we get to record face to face.
Yeah.
Potential.
Oh, and yeah, that's right. Kat mentioned this earlier. Isn't this like our 1 year right here?
It is.
Because we started recording like after like the same week or something when it was announced that it was a pandemic.
Right. Happy anniversary. Back to the decade 1 year mark. I'm excited to potentially be able to record in person again. Obviously, like with our schedules, it's tough, but I think it's like the flow of conversation is often easier face to face than it is in like the computer setting.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll just be nice to both be fully vaccinated and
stop worrying about this damn thing quite so often.
Start to, to
get on with our life.
Put it behind us.
All right. Well, we will wrap up and see you guys next month. Stay safe out there.
Bye-bye.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Cerebral Jukebox.
Yeah, I suppose there's something quite freeing about not knowing the words. So even if they're super dark, you just don't know. So you can because you can get like a lot of songs which have a really cheerful musical undertone, but the actual meaning is quite nasty. And you're like, ooh, this song is a bit much, really. But I suppose with songs that you don't know the actual meanings of, it's just sort of remains it with its like innocent musical intention. I mean, obviously, Feliz Navidad is going to be a happy song. It's a Christmas song.
Right in the childhood.
So, Fraser, have you heard of Round the Twist?
I have not, and the only reason I've done that Australian accent is because I think you mentioned it last time that it was an Australian show.
I did.
So that's all I've got.
So it's an Australian show from the early 90s.
It's not like Home and Away or Neighbours.
I mean, it has the same accents.
Oh, if we can say the same actors.
There might be, I don't remember.
They just do the same three shows over
Wouldn't
and
it be
over again.
funny if Harold Bishop turned up?
I was going to say like Chris Hemsworth or like one of them.
Was Chris Hemsworth in Neighbours?
Yeah.
Was he?
I think Margot Robbie was as well.
Really? Kylie Minogue?
Yeah.
But the thing is, it will be Kylie Minogue era. It'll be Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan, Stephen Dennis, Craig McLachlan, all of these.
The time is now. A Millennium podcast.
To watch Millennium. And again, this is
just to stress this, by the way, I was 18 at the time, so I'm just going to say that. Yeah, okay.
I know. And were you a Kiss fan, Kurt?
I was a rock fan. I don't think I was a Kiss fan, no.
Yeah, because this is exactly the situation that you're in, where you're talking about like middle-aged men in suits in Hollywood who are trying to project what kids want from their entertainment and what will bring them in. It's the same logic that got you, for example, Coolio in the episode Or and Or of Space Above and Beyond, which is Fox desperately reaching into the darkness and trying to find something that would make kids watch it. Because it's worth noting that Kiss were, I believe, in the middle of something close to a Kiss-Renaissance? Is that what we'll call it?
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.